Okay, today's lesson is on the quadratic formula, which is something you've definitely heard before and seen, but we're revisiting it. To start, or do now is apply the discriminant to the following problems to see how many x-intercepts they have. So pause the video, give that a try. Okay, here we go. So the discriminant formula is b squared minus 4ac, where a goes with x squared, b with x, and c is our number. So b squared would be 8 squared minus 4 times our a is 2, c is 7, 8 squared is 64, 4 times 2 is 8, times 7 is 56, 64 minus 56 is 8. That does not mean we have 8 x-intercepts, remember. You use your discriminant in terms of how it relates to 0. So since 8 is greater than 0, it means we have 2 x-intercepts. Over here, b squared minus 4 times a times c. Negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 2 is 8. 49 plus 8 is 57. 57 is greater than 0, so we have 2 x-intercepts. Remember, in these cases, if your discriminant is equal to 0, then you'd have 1. If it's less than 0, then you have 0 x-intercepts. Okay. So the focus for today is on the quadratic formula. It would help to remember what it is. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So to be able to use the quadratic formula, if we know a, b, and c, then we can use it. We can apply it. So let's use the quadratic formula here to solve for the number of x-intercepts. So again, quadratic formula tells us how many x-intercepts we have. That's what it's useful for. So in this case, our a would be 1, our b would be 8, our c would be 12. So x then is equal to negative b, so negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 8 squared, so b squared minus 4 times 1 times 12, so plugging in a and c, all over 2 times a. And now we simplify. So we simplify it by starting within the square root first. So 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 12, so that's minus 48, all over 2. 64 minus 48 is 16. And the square root of 16 is 4. So we have negative 8 plus or minus 4 over 2. What we can do here is split it into two fractions. So negative 8 over 2 plus or minus 4 over 2, and then divide. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we have negative 4 plus or minus 2. So our answers would be negative 4 plus 2, which is negative 2, and negative 4 minus 2, which is negative 6. So our solutions, or x-intercepts, or roots, would be negative 6 and negative 2. Okay. All right. The focus actually for this target is a little bit easier. We don't have to plug them in. We just have to simplify. So that's our goal here. We're going to simplify these quadratics that are already set up in the quadratic formula. So the way we simplify, again, start by what's in the square root, simplifying that. So negative 5 squared is 25, because negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. Minus 4 times 1 is 4, times negative 14 would be negative 56, but we're subtracting negative 56, so that'll be plus, all over 2. Biggest mistake I see here is forgetting that this fraction goes over the whole thing. You gotta have it over that 5 too, or under the 5. So next, simplify under the square root still. So 25 plus 56 is 81. Square root of 81, well, that would be 9, since 9 squared is 81. Now we can split them up if we'd like to. So we have 5 over 2 plus or minus 9 over 2. When you're writing your answers, if you want to leave it like this, I'm usually going to be okay with that. But if we can simplify, it is nice to. So 5 over 2 plus 9 over 2 would give 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And 5 over 2 minus 9 over 2, 5 minus 9 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So we get negative 2 and 7 as our x-intercepts. So this is better because it's simplified more. But there are some cases where you won't be able to simplify beyond that plus or minus, so that's okay if you leave it there. Okay. All right, let's do another together. And if you want to work ahead of me, pause the video, try it on your own, go for it. X equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 12 all over 2 times 2. So 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 4 times 2 times negative 12. So that'll be negative 8 times negative 12 would be positive 96. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. Keep on going. 4 plus 96 is 100. Square root of 100. We know that is 10 since 10 squared is 100. All right, and now we can try and simplify. Let's try and simplify doing the plus or minus first. So we'll have two solutions. X equals negative 2 plus 10 over 4, and x equals negative 2 minus 10 over 4. So negative 2 plus 10 would be 8, divided by 4 would be 2. For the other, negative 2 minus 10 would be negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 4 would be negative 3. So our solutions would be negative 3 and 2. Okay. We do have a couple more. We're going to go through this first one together, then I'll let you try the next one on your own. The first one's a little tricky. Okay, so we start by simplifying. 2 squared, well, that's 4. 4 times 1 times 17, that would be 68. So we have negative 68 all over 2 times 1, which is 2. 4 minus 68 is negative 64. And this should ring an alarm here. You cannot take the square root of a negative. So whenever you have a square root of a negative, remember, we have to use imaginary numbers. So let's just focus on this negative 64 for now. We'll do that kind of off here. Remember, with imaginary numbers, or negative square roots, the square root of negative 1, well, that's equal to I. So what we can do is we can separate the square root of negative 64 into the square root of 1 times the square root of 64. And we know the square root of negative 1 is I, so let's just substitute that there. And we can do the square root of 64, that's just 8. So we have I times 8, or 8I. So the square root of negative 64 would just be 8I. So from here, x equals negative 2 plus or minus 8I all over 2. You can divide both by 2. I notice they're both divisible. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And we can't really go any further than this because if we do negative 1 plus 4I and negative 1 minus 4I, these are not like terms. One has an I and the other doesn't. So it does not become like 3 or 3I or negative 5I or anything like that. So there's no way to combine those any further. So both of these would be acceptable answers. All right. Why don't you give the next one a try on your own? Pause the video. Okay, we're back. We have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times 13. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 times 13 is negative 104. And then 2 times 2 on the bottom is 4. Negative 2 plus or minus 4 minus 104 is negative 100 all over 4. Again, we've got a negative square root, so we have to incorporate imaginary numbers. So let's separate that into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 100, which then we know Square root of negative 1, that's just I. Square root of 100, that's just 10. So we just have 10 times I, or 10I, all over 4. And we can simplify these a little bit, so let's separate into negative 2 over 4. Sorry, I'm losing my plus or minus here. Plus or minus 10I over 4, which we can simplify dividing top and bottom by 2 for each. So that would be negative 1/2 plus or minus 5I over 2, like so. And there you have it.